Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys a full day of healthy eating. This is kind of what a typical day looks like for me as far as what I eat. I am a registered dietitian, I am an intuitive eater, and I'm very passionate about real, whole, nourishing food. I'm not perfect, but this is mainly how I like to eat because it's how I feel my best. I am also currently pregnant. I'm in my third trimester, so definitely trying to really fuel my body well and get all the nourishing foods in for baby as well as myself. So if you want to see what a typical day looks like for me these days, then let's get started. Each morning for breakfast, we do try and make something hot and homemade and filling. And I recently have been playing around with a sourdough English muffin recipe. Normally, I'm not like a big recipe developer by any means. There's so many good ones already out there on the internet. But if I can't find one that I love, then I try and create something that myself that I really like. So I've been working on this recipe. I really like the way that these turned out. I'm gonna tweak it just a little bit and then I will share with you guys, but they are so good. I do start them the night before because it's sourdough. Basically just throw everything in my mixer, let the dough ferment overnight, and then in the morning I will actually cut them and cook them on the skillet. And we just had these with some scrambled eggs. Are actually still getting a decent amount of eggs from our chickens, even though it's December. And I had a little bit of butter and organic raspberry jam on my English muffin, and it was delicious and so filling, and obviously had a good amount of protein from the eggs. Protein in the morning is so important, not just for me, but also I want to make sure my kids are eating protein every morning as well. This breakfast kept me full for, at least a few hours, and then eventually I did want a snack. Most days I do want a snack in the mid-morning. So lately I have been loving yogurt. I actually make my own yogurt homemade in the Instant Pot, which sounds really maybe fancy, but it's honestly so easy. It's like the most hands-off process. So I just make plain whole milk yogurt in my Instant Pot and store it in the fridge. And then lately I've been topping it with my homemade cranberry sauce, which I made a bunch around Thanksgiving, and I still have some left over. So we have just been enjoying that. It's just a great way to sweeten it up and add a lot of flavor, but it's obviously naturally sweetened as well. And then yogurt itself is another good source of protein. It's also high in calcium and vitamin D and potassium and phosphorus, but it's also a fermented food as well, which you'll see throughout this video. I try and eat a lot of fermented foods because one, it's just good for your gut, but also I'm really not trying to test positive for GBS with this pregnancy. I did with my last. So I'm basically on a mission and I've been eating lots of fermented foods. A little while later, it was time for lunch. So the very first thing I actually did was start heating up some bone broth. I have been loving bone broth so much recently. It's just so rich and so salty, and it's just so hot and comforting, and I've just been all about it, especially during this pregnancy. And I do make it myself. We roast a chicken like once a week and we use the meat in whatever meals, and then I just dump everything in my Instant Pot and I make it in there. I have a video all about how to make bone broth. I can link that down below. Again, very easy, very hands-off, and it's basically free for one of like the most nourishing foods that you can get. So I heated up that and I had a big mug of that with my lunch. And then for lunch, it's typically some kind of leftovers or some kind of like protein I've prepared ahead of time. For example, like a chicken salad. I didn't have anything like that, but I did have actually some meatloaf in the fridge that I had cooked for dinner a couple nights before, and when I made it I just doubled the recipe, so we had extras. Usually if I have some kind of protein, I can build out a really like yummy, filling, nourishing lunch, but the protein for me is key, especially because in pregnancy, especially in that third trimester, your protein needs really go up. Like 75 to 100 grams of protein is kind of what you're shooting for. I don't track what I eat. I am more so listen to my body, but it's just a very conscious effort for me to eat protein at every meal. So I had a little bit of that leftover meatloaf, and then I paired it with some sauerkraut because one, I love sauerkraut. I think it's so delicious. I also make that myself. It's also extremely easy, and it's also a fermented food as well. And then I also had a little bit of some of the leftover English muffins because they were just so good and I just wanted to eat them again. I just had half and I put a little grass-fed butter on it, as well as some greens that I just put some balsamic vinegar and olive oil on, nothing fancy, and drank it with, or ate that with my side of bone broth, and it was delicious and incredibly filling and also very nutrient dense. A little bit later in the day, it was time to get dinner started. I was very full from that lunch, didn't end up having an afternoon snack. Sometimes I do, but on this day I didn't. And as I was cooking dinner, I was munching on sugar snap peas, which has been such a craving for me this pregnancy, just like in my last one. I also crave a ton of chocolate chip cookies, so don't think I just literally crave like raw veggies, no. But I do love them. They're just unbelievably crunchy and satisfying. I don't know what it is. When I'm not pregnant, I like don't really care for them. They're okay, but something about being pregnant, I just love me some sugar snap peas. But so for dinner, I actually made, it's called a sourdough skillet. I discovered this recipe years ago from Lisa from House on Boone. If you guys aren't subscribed to her, you absolutely should be. And it's just been a favorite ever since. It's a great meal to make just to kind of use up whatever you have in your fridge. It's super flexible. I just did some ground pork and we had broccoli, a bunch of broccoli in the fridge. I always have onions on hand. Usually have fresh garlic. Actually didn't today, but I'll just chop up the veggies, cook up the pork, season it really well, and then you just make a like sourdough topping to go on top. So I had a bunch of sourdough starter that I wanted to kind of use up. So I used, that's kind of what inspired this meal. I didn't want to just give it, I mean, sometimes I just give it to the chickens, but I wanted to actually use it. So it's just like sourdough starter, and it could be fed or not fed, it doesn't matter. Some eggs and some seasonings and some oil and some baking powder, and you just basically pour it on top and you bake it in the oven. You can also add cheese on top. I didn't this time because I just didn't have enough, but it is so delicious. It's so filling, and it's very easy to just throw together and stick in the oven. Those are like my favorite dinners where I don't have to actually stand there and cook the entire time. Especially just being on my feet at the end of pregnancy is not my favorite thing. So that's what we had for dinner. It was super delicious, and I had it with a little bit of ketchup to dip in. It was so yummy, and again, very nourishing. But that is all I have, you guys. Here is a typical day of eating. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have yet to subscribe, would love for you to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.